My brother drained $80,000 from our joint account in one night, then sent me a laughing emoji. "It's just family money," he said, smug and drunk on arrogance. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I called my lawyer, opened my laptop, and whispered, "Freeze everything he owns tonight." I'm Emma Carter, 35, co-founder of a small property development company in Portland. Practical, cautious, the kind of person who double-checks every receipt and balances the books twice before signing. My brother Luke is 32, and everything I'm not: reckless, magnetic, addicted to shortcuts. He can walk into a room and make everyone like him. He can also walk out with your trust and your money. We'd grown up close, or at least I thought so. Our parents passed when we were young, and for a long time, it felt like it was just us against the world. I paid my way through college with part-time jobs, while Luke chased one big break after another: car flipping, crypto trading, a food truck that lasted 4 months. I loved him anyway. When I started my company 5 years ago, he asked to join. "You're the brains," he said with that easy grin. "I'll be the charm." And he was for a while. Clients liked him. Deals closed faster. We created a joint business account to handle project funds, equal access, equal rights. It worked smoothly for years, until it didn't. A few months ago, Luke started talking about a new investment, a promising real estate opportunity with an overseas partner. He said it would double our profits in 6 months. I told him to slow down, to bring me documents, a contract, proof of legitimacy. He waved me off. "You always overthink things, Em. Trust me for once." I should have known that "trust me" was code for "don't ask questions." We argued about it for days. I refused to authorize the transfer. He sulked, then apologized, said he'd drop it. We went back to business as usual, or so I thought. Then came that Friday. I was sitting at my desk when my phone pinged 3 consecutive notifications from our joint account. Transfer completed. $80,000. At first, I thought it was a glitch. We rarely moved that much without notice. I refreshed the page. The balance stared back at me, nearly empty. My chest went cold. I called Luke. He didn't answer. Then a message popped up on my screen. A screenshot of the withdrawal confirmation, his name right there beside the transfer ID. Beneath it, a text. "Relax. It's an investment. You'll thank me later." Followed by a laughing emoji. I called again. This time, he picked up. His voice was maddeningly casual. "Don't freak out, Em. I didn't steal it, I just moved it." "Without telling me?" I snapped. "You drained our account." "It's family money," he said, laughing. "We're in this together." "No, Luke," I said. "You're in this alone." He scoffed. "God. You sound like Dad. Always tight. Always scared. Money's useless if you don't take risks." "Risks aren't the same as theft," I said. He chuckled. "Don't be dramatic. You'll get it back." Then he hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, numb. The office was silent except for the hum of my computer. My business partner, my brother, had just robbed me, and he thought it was funny. That evening, I checked the account again. The money was gone, transferred to a private brokerage under his name. No co-signature, no approval. He'd already converted part of it into crypto. I emailed the bank, filed a dispute, and requested a freeze. The automated reply said it could take up to 3 business days. 3 days was too long. I called Mom's sister, our only close relative. "He's done it again," I told her. She sighed. "Emma, he's your brother. Don't go nuclear. He'll fix it." "He won't," I said. "He never does." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my apartment like a ghost, replaying every time I'd covered his debts, co-signed his loans, defended him to family. He'd always said, "You're the safe one, Em. That's your role." And I'd believed it, thinking safety meant strength. But that night, safety meant stupidity. By midnight, Anger gave way to clarity. I opened my laptop and started gathering every piece of paper that tied us together. Bank statements, contracts, email threads, chat logs. Each file was proof that the account was joint, that he had no legal right to move that money without consent. At 12:37 a.m., I called a lawyer, a corporate contact who owed me a favor. He answered groggily, and I told him everything. There was a pause. Then he said quietly, "I can file an emergency injunction tonight. We can freeze his assets within hours." I looked at the clock, the empty balance still glowing on my screen, and said, "Do it." The lawyer exhaled. "Emma, are you sure? He's your brother." He stopped being my brother the moment he laughed. By morning, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was focused. The account was proof. The law was on my side. I poured coffee, opened my laptop, and whispered to myself, "He wants to play smart? Let's see how smart he feels when every cent freezes before sunrise." Saturday morning arrived without sleep. My phone kept buzzing notifications from the bank. Flagged transactions. Emails marked urgent. The account balance was still zero. It was like watching an organ stop beating in real time. At 8:10 a.m. Milayer, Daniel, called. "I've drafted the injunction," he said. "It's ready to file, but I'll need proof of ownership statements, correspondence, your partnership documents." "I already have them," I said. "I'm sending them now." He paused. "Emma, you understand what this means, right? Once we file, it becomes a legal matter. Family or not." I understand," I said, staring out the window at the gray Portland sky. "I'm done playing family accountant." As the call ended, my phone buzzed again. Luke. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I answered. Relax. I told you it's fine," he said, sounding like he'd just woken up. "I had a meeting with the investor this morning. Big deal. We're both going to be rich." "Investor?" I asked. "What investor?" "Guy named Travis. Runs an import-export firm. He's got connections." I needed to show liquidity. That's why I moved the money. "You stole the money." He laughed, an ugly, hollow sound. "God, you're dramatic." "It's called taking initiative. You've got to take risks in business." "With my savings?" I snapped. "With our savings," he corrected, emphasizing the word. "Half of that money was mine." "Then you stole my half," I said coldly. "That's $40,000, Luke. You're not going to sick lawyers on your own brother," he said, still amused. I let the silence stretch. His voice faltered. "You wouldn't." "I already did." The line went dead. By noon, the rest of the family knew. Mom called first, then Aunt Grace. Both of them said the same thing in different tones, pleading, guilt-tripping, warning. "Emma, don't ruin his life," Mom said. "He's your brother." "He ruined mine first," I replied. "You've always been so cold with him," she said, voice trembling. "He's not perfect. He's a thief," I cut in. She gasped. "You don't mean that." "I do." Grace tried a softer approach. "He made a mistake. You can't just drag him into court. Family isn't supposed to do that." I stared at the frozen coffee on my desk. Family isn't supposed to steal either. After that, no one called again. That evening, I drove to Luke's condo. The place was pure Luke, half-unpacked boxes, a pile of designer sneakers by the door, and the faint smell of whiskey and arrogance. He opened the door shirtless, holding a beer, smirk already loaded. Well, he said, "the queen of overreaction. Where's the money?" He shrugged. "Gonna. Invested." "In what?" He raised his bottle like a toast. "A future." I stepped inside, ignoring the sarcasm. "The bank's flagged the transfer. It's under review. You can fix this now, or it's going to get worse." He scoffed. "Oh, come on. You think your little review scares me? It's not even your account alone. You can't freeze my assets without cause." "I can if the transfer was unauthorized." He rolled his eyes. We both had access. You can't prove anything. I can, I said. Every transaction you made had your ID attached. You used your device, your signature. The audit logs don't lie. For the first time, his smirk wavered. Jesus, Emma, you're serious, he said quietly. You really think I'm some criminal? I don't think, I said. I know. His face hardened. You wouldn't dare. You'd destroy this family. I'm not destroying anything, I said, stepping closer. I'm saving what's left. He looked at me for a long second, then laughed sharp, desperate. You always loved control. Fine. Go ahead. See what it costs you. I left without another word. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of him through the narrow gap, smirking again, trying to convince himself he'd already won. But the panic in his eyes said otherwise. That night, I gathered everything: emails, texts, bank statements, the contract that defined the joint account, even screenshots of his mocking messages. Daniel called just before midnight. I'll file first thing tomorrow, he said. Once it's processed, the freeze order goes through every account linked to his name. How long will it take? A few hours, if we push it through emergency channels. I looked at the clock. Then start now. Daniel hesitated. You sound calm. But I am, I said. He wants to play games with money? Fine. I make the rules now. Sunday morning arrived with the stillness of a storm about to break. I sat in my office with a mug of coffee gone cold, watching the city wake up below. My inbox was a battlefield: emails from the bank, from Daniel, from Luke's so-called partners. The tone had shifted from arrogance to panic. Daniel's message was short. Petition filed. Emergency motion accepted. Expect freeze order to execute within 12 hours. I read it twice, then again. The law was now in motion. The next time Luke tried to touch $1, it would turn to ice. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Emma Carter? Yes. This is Detective Rollins with the Portland Financial Crimes Unit. We received your fraud report through your attorney. I'll need a statement confirming your brother's involvement. My breath hitched for a second. It was real now, no longer just sibling drama, but criminal procedure. Of course, I said. When do you need me? Today, if possible. The faster we log your testimony, the faster we can issue a hold on any pending transfers. I agreed immediately. After hanging up, I sat back and let the weight of it settle. My brother was about to face criminal investigation, and I was the one who pulled the trigger. At 3 p.m., I drove to the station, handed over my files, and gave my statement. The detective was professional, neither judgmental nor sympathetic. Family fraud cases are messy, he said finally. But you did the right thing by documenting everything. Without proof, it's just a he said, she said situation. With this, he tapped the folder. It's airtight. I nodded, grateful but hollow. He's my brother, I said quietly. The detective met my eyes. That doesn't make what he did less criminal. When I left the station, my phone lit up with a barrage of messages. Mom, Aunt Grace, and finally Luke. Mom, what did you do? The police came to his condo. Aunt Grace. Emma, this has gone too far. He's humiliated. Can't you just drop it? Luke, you actually called the cops? Jesus, you're insane. You just declared war. I typed slowly, deliberately. You declared it the moment you touched my money. That evening, he showed up at my building. Security called up first. A man named Luke Carter is here, he's shouting. I went down anyway. He stood in the lobby, disheveled, eyes bloodshot. You called the police on me, he shouted, ignoring the stares from neighbors. You froze my accounts. Yes, I said simply. And if you don't leave, I'll call them again. You think you're better than me? He snarled. You've always wanted to see me crawl. I don't want to see you crawl, I said evenly. I want to see you stop. 1. He laughed bitterly. You can't do this. It's our account. Not anymore, I said, holding up the court order Daniel had emailed me. The red stamp across the top read, "Temporary Asset Freeze. Carter, Luke." He snatched the paper, scanning it, then looked up in disbelief. "You actually went through with it. I told you I would." He crumpled the page in his fist. "You've destroyed me, Emma." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed trust. I just reported the crime scene." All day. Before he could respond, a uniformed officer entered the lobby. Detective Rollins again. "Mr. Carter, you need to leave. You've been notified of a pending investigation. Any interference with Miss Carter could be considered intimidation." Luke froze. For once, his mouth didn't find a comeback. He turned toward me, eyes wide with something between rage and disbelief. "You really did it," he whispered. "You actually turned me in." I met his gaze. "I told you last night, Luke. I'm done being your safety net." The following morning, I woke up to a different kind of quiet one, heavy with purpose. My phone lit up before I even reached for it. Emails from Daniel, updates from the bank, and one short message that made my pulse steady. "Freeze order confirmed. All active accounts under his name are restricted. Brokerage access revoked. Vehicle lien registered. He won't be able to move a cent." I reread it 3 times. It was official. The laughter from 2 nights ago had turned into legal silence. Still, the process wasn't over. There were loopholes, assets he might try to hide, digital accounts he could use to slip funds through. I knew Luke, if there was a way to cheat the system, he'd find it. Daniel called a few minutes later. "We've got confirmation from the bank," he said. "But to make this airtight, we need to secure his crypto holdings and any secondary income accounts. PayPal, investment wallets, the lot." "Oh, I have his login patterns," I said. "And the emails he used to create them. I can help you find them." There was a pause, a low chuckle. "You're remarkably composed for someone who just sued her brother." "I've had 30 years to practice." We spent the next 3 hours combing through data, his phone backups, business correspondence, even the cloud drive we once shared for work. Every login attempt, every transaction left a breadcrumb. The deeper we went, the clearer it became. Luke had planned this long before I caught on. He'd taken out a private loan using our company's name, transferred small amounts over months, and pooled them into that final $80,000 hit. He'd even created fake invoices to make it look like project expenses. It wasn't just theft, it was calculated fraud. When Daniel saw the evidence, his tone changed. "This isn't a sibling dispute anymore," he said. "This is embezzlement." I exhaled slowly. "Then we treat it like embezzlement." That afternoon, we filed for an extension of the freeze order, expanding it to include any shell companies or digital wallets connected to him. Daniel submitted the documents to the district court clerk with an urgency stamp. I sat beside him, watching the clerk mark the papers with a red seal. Each stamp sounded like a heartbeat. When it was done, Daniel turned to me. "He's going to find out soon. Be prepared." "I am," I said. He gave a small smile. "You say that like you mean it." "I do." But even as I said it, I could feel the tension building, like waiting for thunder after lightning. Luke wasn't the kind of man to take defeat quietly. Sure enough, that evening, the calls started. Unknown numbers, voicemail threats, long texts that swung between anger and guilt. "You've gone too far. You're going to regret this. Mom's crying, you monster." I ignored them all. At 10 p.m., Daniel emailed me again. He attempted to open a new account with another brokerage under a secondary ID. It was flagged instantly. Freeze still in effect. For the first time, I smiled. The system was working. The walls were closing in. The next morning, the fallout began. His company's board members, once charmed by his confidence, were now demanding answers. His business partner released a statement announcing an internal audit. He was effectively locked out of every professional circle he'd used to hide behind. Mom called again, her voice trembling. "He says you're destroying him." "No," I said calmly. "I'm stopping him before he destroys anyone else." She sighed. "He's family, Emma. So am I. That stopped her cold. She didn't respond after that. By noon, the detective called with one final update. He came in for questioning this morning, Rollins said. He's denying everything, but we've got enough to keep the investigation active. If he tries to touch any frozen assets, it's contempt of court. Good, I said quietly. Let him try. I hung up, sat back, and looked around my office, the same one that had felt violated days ago. Now it felt safe again. The fear was gone, the waiting was over. For the first time since he laughed, I felt something new rising in its place. Control. The officer guided him toward the exit. The glass doors slid open, and for the first time in years, I watched my brother walk away without me cleaning up after him. That night, my apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge. I sat at the table with the copy of the court order and Daniel's text glowing on my phone. Accounts confirmed frozen. He can't access funds, crypto, or assets under his name. You're secure. For a long time, I just stared at those words. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Just a strange, trembling relief. He had laughed when he stole from me. But now, every laugh had been silenced by the sound of a gavel, by the click of locks sealing the fortune he thought he owned. And I realized something as I turned off the lights. This wasn't revenge, it was recovery. Tomorrow would be the reckoning. By Monday morning, the freeze had gone viral in his world. Luke's business associates, his clients, even his landlord were calling me for confirmation. I didn't answer most of them. The truth didn't need me anymore, it had its own momentum. But Luke wasn't done fighting. At 9 a.m., Daniel called me, voice tight. He's trying to move assets through his girlfriend's account, he said. Small transactions, but enough to test the freeze. I clenched my jaw. Can we block that too? We can. I'm filing a motion to extend the freeze to any accounts proven to be receiving his funds. We'll call it asset concealment via proxy. He hesitated. Emma, I have to ask, do you want to press full charges? It'll get ugly. I looked at my laptop screen, where Luke's mocking message still sat unread. You'll regret this. Yes, I said. Let's finish it. That evening, the air in Portland felt sharp and electric, the way it does before a thunderstorm. My phone buzzed Mom again. Emma, please, she said, voice breaking. He's losing everything. The car, the house, his reputation. He chose all of that, I interrupted softly. I warned him. Okay. He's your brother. I closed my eyes. And I'm his victim. Silence. Then, quietly, she said, he's at your building. I froze. What? He said he just wants to talk. I looked out my window, and there he was, standing by the curb under the streetlight. His posture wasn't angry this time. It was slumped, exhausted. Against my better judgment, I went downstairs. He looked up when I stepped outside. The confident grin was gone. His eyes were bloodshot, clothes wrinkled, a man hollowed out by his own arrogance. You win, he said flatly. Is that what you wanted? No, I said. What I wanted was respect. He gave a humorless laugh. Respect doesn't pay rent. Neither does fraud. He flinched. You could have called me before dragging me through hell. I called you, I said. You laughed. He shoved his hands in his pockets, pacing. You think freezing my accounts fixes anything? You think I don't have other ways? You can't keep me down forever. Maybe not, I said calmly. But you'll never steal from me again. His voice rose, anger flickering back to life. You ruined me, Emma. I have nothing now. You had everything, I said, stepping closer. You had my trust. You burned it for $80,000. And a laugh. For a moment, he looked ready to explode again, but then something shifted. His shoulders dropped. The fight drained out of him. What do I do now? He asked quietly. I met his eyes. You start by paying it back. He laughed bitterly. It's frozen, remember? I know, I said. That's why the court will decide how it comes out, not you. He shook his head. You're colder than I thought. I'm not cold, I said. I'm done. The next morning, Daniel sent me the final update. Court accepted full injunction. Attempted proxy transfers logged. Investigation expanding to include co-conspirators. You're protected. He added one more line, almost like a personal note. For what it's worth, you did everything right. I stared at those words for a long time. Everything right. It didn't feel right. It felt necessary. At noon, a notice arrived in my inbox, a digital receipt confirming that Luke's brokerage accounts, properties, and vehicle assets had all been placed under legal hold pending restitution. In one weekend, the man who laughed had lost every cent he could touch. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The world outside buzzed with noise, but inside, everything was quiet again. It wasn't joy. I felt it was release, the kind that comes after holding your breath too long. Luke had played with my trust and called it business. I'd answered with law and called it justice. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. 3 weeks later, the court hearing was scheduled. It wasn't a criminal trial yet, just a civil injunction hearing to finalize the asset freeze and decide whether restitution would move forward. But it might as well have been a public execution. The courthouse smelled like cold marble and stress. I arrived early, dressed in black slacks and a cream blouse, my files organized into a neat folder labeled Carter Holdings, Fraud Case. Daniel walked beside me, calm and composed, carrying the thicker stack, the evidence. Stay silent unless spoken to, he reminded me. Let the documents talk. I nodded. That's all I've ever wanted them to do. Luke arrived 5 minutes late. He was wearing a suit that didn't fit right, hair unkempt, eyes ringed with exhaustion. The same man who'd once walked into boardrooms flashing confidence now looked smaller, like he'd shrunk under the weight of his own schemes. He didn't look at me when he sat down. The judge entered, a stern woman in her 60s with a face carved from discipline. We're here to address the matter of unauthorized asset transfer between the parties, Emma Carter and Luke Carter. Daniel rose first. His voice was steady, controlled, devastatingly polite. Your Honor, my client is the co-owner of the joint business account in question. On March 5th, Mr. Luke Carter withdrew $80,000 without consent and used falsified documentation to conceal the transfer. Exhibit A includes the withdrawal record, Exhibit B, the communication following the transfer, and Exhibit C, the subsequent attempt to open new accounts in third-party names. He handed the binder to the clerk. Every page landed with the weight of truth. Luke's lawyer, a young, jittery man who looked like he'd been hired yesterday, stood up. Your Honor, this was a misunderstanding. My client was under the impression he had authority to use the funds for a shared business investment. There was no malicious intent. The judge raised an eyebrow. An investment involving cryptocurrency, transfers to a personal wallet, and a brokerage account under a separate alias? The defense lawyer faltered. He believed the profits would benefit them both. The judge turned to Luke. Is that your claim, Mr. Carter? Luke swallowed. Yes, ma'am. It was a business decision gone wrong. I admit I should have told her. Daniel stood again. With respect, Your Honor, my client discovered that the so-called investment company doesn't exist. The recipient wallet was verified as belonging to the defendant. This wasn't a business decision. It was theft. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. Mr. Carter, do you have documentation to prove this was a legitimate business expense? Luke hesitated, flipping through papers that weren't there. Not exactly. How? Then this court accepts that you acted without authorization, the judge said flatly. Proceed. For the next hour, Daniel presented every piece of evidence, emails, text messages, screenshots of Luke's mockery, even the attempted proxy transfers through his girlfriend's account. Each time, Luke sank lower in his chair, when the laughter from his texts flashed across the courtroom screen. Relax, it's family money. There was a low murmur from the audience. Even the bailiff shook his head. I didn't look at him. I just kept my eyes forward, hands clasped. By the time Daniel finished, the judge looked unimpressed, almost disappointed. "Mr. Carter, it appears you not only violated fiduciary duty but also demonstrated deliberate deception. Do you have anything to say before I finalize the ruling?" Luke finally looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's my sister," he said. "I made a mistake. But we're family. I never thought she'd go this far." The judge sighed. "Family doesn't exempt you from accountability. In fact, betrayal from family cuts deeper. The law doesn't ignore that, it enforces it." She signed the document in front of her, the pen scratching across the paper like a closing door. "Effective immediately," she said. "The asset freeze will remain in place until restitution is complete. All seized funds, property, and accounts will remain under court supervision. Miss Carter will be designated as the sole financial guardian of the joint entity for a minimum of 2 years." The sound of the gavel hitting the desk echoed like thunder. Luke flinched. "I didn't." Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Someone must have leaked the case. Questions flew like daggers. "Emma, how does it feel to sue your own brother?" "Luke, do you regret it?" Daniel guided me past them, ignoring the noise. But I caught Luke's voice behind me, rising above the chaos. "You think you've won?" he shouted. "You just destroyed your own blood for money." I stopped, turned, and met his eyes across the flashing cameras. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourself for greed." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him surrounded by his own mess, his voice fading into static. The next few days unfolded like aftershocks. The ruling had detonated in Luke's world, and everything he'd built on charm and shortcuts came crashing down. His brokerage firm suspended him. His business partner went on record to say he'd been misled and deceived. Former clients demanded refunds. His name, once associated with ambition and boldness, now trended online beside words like fraud, embezzlement, and family betrayal. The court had frozen every asset: the car, the condo, the accounts. Even the motorcycle he used to show off had been impounded. He couldn't rent, couldn't sell, couldn't even apply for a credit card. For the first time in his life, Luke was powerless. Mom called me again that week. Her voice was smaller this time, the anger gone. "He's not doing well," she said quietly. "He's been staying with me since they locked his apartment. I don't recognize him anymore." I didn't answer. "Emma, please," she continued. "You made your point. Can't you stop now?" "It's not my hand on the switch anymore," I said. "It's the courts." She sighed. "You sound just like your father." "Oh, that used to be an insult," I said. "It isn't anymore." A week later, Daniel called with an update. "The financial audit is complete," he said. "After recovery and penalties, you'll be refunded $80,000 plus interest. His accounts will remain restricted until repayment is verified." "Meaning?" "Meaning you win, Emma." I didn't smile. I didn't want to win. I wanted him to stop. Still, when I opened the email later that night, a statement showing a fresh deposit of $81,267. 43 into my business account, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not joy, not triumph. Just balance restored. 2 days later, Luke asked to meet. Against every instinct, I agreed. We met at a small diner near Mom's house, the kind of neutral place where nothing dramatic could happen. He looked thinner, his confidence gone, replaced by something fragile. He didn't order food, just a black coffee he barely touched. "You got your money back," he said after a long silence. "Yes," he nodded. "And you got your justice." "I got accountability," I corrected. He gave a hollow laugh. "You always were good with words. And you were always good at using them to lie." He flinched, but didn't deny it. "They froze everything, you know. Even my savings account. I had to borrow bus fare from Mom." "I know," I said softly. "That's what happens when you break trust." He stared at me for a long time. "You really hate me that much?" I don't hate you, I said. I just stopped making excuses for you. He looked away, jaw tight. I thought I was helping. I really did. I thought if I could double the money, you'd finally see I wasn't useless. You weren't useless, I said. You were dangerous to yourself and to everyone who trusted you. For a moment, his eyes glistened. He blinked quickly, looking away again. I don't know how to fix it. You don't fix it, I said. You live with it. You learn from it. And next time someone trusts you, you earn it instead of taking it. He nodded slowly, shoulders sagging. I never thought you'd really turn me in. I warned you, I said. I gave you every chance. He ran a hand through his hair, voice trembling. Mom says she forgives me. Do you? I took a deep breath. Yes, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or rebuilding. We're not going back, Luke. He swallowed hard, then stood up. Then, I guess this is it. Yes, I said quietly. This is it. He hesitated a moment longer, then turned and walked out into the gray Portland rain. The door closed behind him with a soft chime that sounded like an ending. When I got home that night, the city lights reflected off the wet streets like liquid glass. I opened my laptop and checked the account again. $81,267.43. Untouched. Still frozen, but this time under my control. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to exhale fully. He had stolen $80,000 and laughed. I had frozen his world and moved on. And somewhere between those two moments, I found something far more valuable than money. Peace that couldn't be stolen again. Months passed. The chaos quieted, the headlines faded, and the city returned to its ordinary rhythm. But in the Carter family, nothing was ordinary anymore. Luke's name still lingered in whispers among former colleagues, at family gatherings, even in casual conversation at local cafes. People always spoke softly, as though the scandal might still be contagious. He'd become a living cautionary tale, the man who thought charm could outsmart accountability. Mom had stopped defending him. That alone said everything. When I visited her one Sunday afternoon, she greeted me with an awkward smile, a mix of pride and guilt. The house felt heavier than it used to, photos missing from shelves, boxes stacked near the hall, as though she'd been quietly packing away pieces of denial. He's moved out, she said, pouring tea. Got a job with a small logistics company. It's modest, but it's honest. That's good, I said, meaning it. She hesitated, stirring her cup even though there was nothing left to dissolve. He said you wouldn't answer his calls. I don't have anything left to say. You always had something to say, she murmured. I sighed. He needs to live without leaning on me. Maybe that's how he learns. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. He told me he's paying the restitution on time, never missed a payment. I know, I said. The bank sends monthly updates. Mom looked at me carefully. Do you think he'll ever forgive himself? I met her gaze. That's not my forgiveness to give. She smiled sadly, as if she finally understood. Luke did keep paying. Every month, without fail. Not through charm, not through excuses, just small, consistent deposits, the slow language of accountability. Occasionally, I'd get an envelope in the mail. No return address, but I always knew it was from him. Inside would be the payment receipt and a single line written on the back, still trying. At first, I didn't reply. Then, one day, I did. Keep going. That was the entire exchange. We didn't need more. In time, I started sleeping better. The anxiety that used to live in my chest finally moved out. The business recovered. My staff stopped tiptoeing around the subject of the missing funds. We finished projects, signed new clients, and slowly, stability replaced tension. But the biggest shift wasn't in my bank balance, it was in my sense of boundaries. For the first time, I understood that protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Family had always been my weak spot. I mistook forgiveness for endurance, mistook loyalty for silence. But when silence allows abuse, it stops being noble, it becomes complicity. One evening, I stood by my office window, watching the city lights flicker like stars that refused to die. Daniel had just called to say the case was officially closed. The accounts were unfrozen, all restitution paid. The law had done its job. But the healing was quieter. It didn't come from the courts, it came from choosing not to carry his guilt anymore. A few weeks later, Mom organized a small dinner. It was the first time in a year we'd all been in the same room. Luke arrived late, dressed simply, no swagger left. He hugged Mom first, then stood in front of me. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me," he said. "Even when it looked like you did." I didn't answer. I just nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. Not really. But it was peace. And peace was enough. When dinner ended, we stepped outside. The air was crisp, the moon reflecting off the car windows. Luke turned to me one last time. "You froze my life," he said with a small smile, "and somehow thawed my conscience." "Then it was worth it," I said. He nodded and walked away, disappearing into the night. For the first time, I didn't feel like the one cleaning up the mess. I felt like the one who had finally built something solid myself. He stole $80,000 and laughed. I froze his assets and found my strength. And in the end, the balance wasn't just financial. It was moral. A year later, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me in the mirror. Not because I looked different, but because I finally felt unshakable. The chaos had long ended. The legal papers were filed away. The debt was paid. And the silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. For years, I'd thought that protecting family meant absorbing their mistakes. I used to believe love and sacrifice were the same thing. They're not. Love without respect becomes a trap. Sacrifice without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Luke taught me that lesson the hard way. When he took that $80,000, he didn't just steal money, he stole trust, time, and the illusion that family was immune to betrayal. But freezing his assets wasn't revenge. It was the moment I stopped apologizing for demanding accountability. The truth is, people who exploit kindness always expect silence. They count on your hesitation, your guilt, your fear of being too harsh. The moment you stop playing that role, the moment you stop explaining why you deserve fairness, they lose their power. I thought freezing his accounts would make me feel vindicated. Instead, it made me feel free. Because control isn't about punishing others, it's about protecting yourself. Now, when people ask me what happened between Luke and me, I don't tell them about the lawyers or the court. I tell them about the night I stopped shaking, the morning I made coffee without fear, and the day I realized I could build a life that no one could drain again. Luke and I still speak occasionally, brief, polite, almost normal. He's rebuilding, slowly. He never said, "I'm sorry," and I never asked him to. Some lessons are too big for words. I've learned that justice doesn't always come from judges or courts. Sometimes it comes from one quiet decision, the decision to stop letting someone rewrite your worth. He stole $80,000 and laughed. I froze his world and found peace. And if I ever had to do it again, I would, because sometimes the coldest act of justice is simply choosing yourself.